My name is Murad Idris. I'm a fellow with the Society of Fellows in the Humanities at Columbia and a lecturer in the Department of Political Science. I received my PhD in 2012 from the University of Pennsylvania in political science. My research is about the ways in which ideas are transferred across different intellectual traditions and across different time periods. So with the Western context, going from Plato to Aquinas to Grotius and Gentili and to Immanuel Kant. And then with the Arabic and Islamic context, the way that those same sets of ideas can be elaborated from pre-Islamic contexts to, once again, Plato, and then into Islamic philosophers, and then finally into Islamists that are thinking about many of these same problems. I'm currently working on two book projects. The first book project is called War for Peace, and it traces out the way that peace as a universal ideal actually does a lot of political work that tends to go neglected. So the appeals for peace and the justification, war for peace, appear so prevalently across the history of political thought and also in contemporary politics. And what I'm arguing is that when we look at the actual historical, cultural, political, and other contexts surrounding many of these claims, we can actually see that the work that's being performed by such claims and by such ideas are always implicated in questions that are being elided, such as who's the enemy here? Why is peace being idealized in the way that it's being idealized? My second book project is about the claim that Islam is a religion of peace. We've all heard all these attempts to define the word Islam and sort of say that that says something about the essence of Islam, whether it's the word Islam means submission, so therefore Islam is a religion of submission that demands absolute obedience, or Islam is a religion of peace because the Arabic word salam, which means peace, is related to the Arabic word Islam. I'm currently teaching in the core curriculum, teaching contemporary civilizations. The students are sophomores, and the texts that we're reading are the canon of Western political theory. The way that I've approached this class is also by diversifying a lot of what we're looking at. So for instance, we've read Confucius's Analects, we've read Kautilya's Arthashastra, and we are questioning a lot of the different ethical problems that arise not just in the different texts that we're looking at, but also in the contemporary moment and across different traditions and different historical periods. He says, instead of treating your slaves so that they're scared of you, you should treat them so that they love you. Kind of seems to demand something of you, though.
It's like, just as one should overcome their fear of death and all the inevitable, you shouldn't hold that over someone else physically.
He says the slave can recognize reason but cannot practice it, and then however the woman has it but it's not authorized. So I think it's like still kind of that level of how you're where you are on the human spectrum relates to how you can reason.
Very often when students are confronted with texts that are written in very particular historical contexts and are quite old, the main question that they have is, how does this bear on how I should be thinking about some particular issue or some particular problem? A kind of demand for relevance, and a very fair demand. So the challenge there becomes showing them that, for instance, when Seneca writes on slavery, or when Aristotle presents his notion of natural slavery, or when the different non-Western texts are taking up some of the very same problems, that these are tools in order for them to be able to think about contemporary questions of inequality, power, domination in more critical and creative ways. My work arose out of a lot of what I saw around me, what I heard around me. For decades, actually, we've been hearing the claim that war is for the sake of peace. We hear this from leaders all across the globe. It was the strangeness of that idea that a war is being waged in order to secure peace that got me thinking that I actually see this claim across the history of political thought, and it really has gone uninterrogated. And then similarly, with the second project on Islam and peace, it was hearing these claims constantly and consistently that Islam is a religion of peace, and then the opposite claim that no, it's not, it's a religion of violence, that made me start thinking, what is the relationship of language and this question of definition to not just contemporary political discourses and contemporary political problems, but also to history? There are many resources at Columbia that are actually central for a lot of my work. The Columbia Library houses an excellent collection in Arabic and Islamic studies. There's something really rewarding about having the other fellows so accessible. And it's also really important that all of us are committed to a kind of interdisciplinary environment so that each of us strives to be able to relate what we're saying to the other concerns of the different fields. And that comes with a lot of challenges. So it's also about being able to recognize when the limits of different disciplines confront one another, and then thinking through how we might overcome those kinds of limits.